How does a poor boy become a rich kid fast? The answer is simple. Just kill the real rich kid and impersonate him. His name is Jack and he's a genius at impersonation. Just by watching someone play the piano once, he can play it right away. He only needs to glance at someone else's signature to reproduce it perfectly. Even the thickness of the strokes is just right. Even the experts can't tell the difference between real and fake. What's even more amazing is that he imitates people's speech.
My ear jazz is just noise. Just insolent noise.
Listen again to how he mimics.
Oh yes, jazz. Oh, jazz, let's face it, it's just insolent noise.
But talent did not change his fate as a poor man. Living at the bottom, he has no opportunities. He had to earn money by painting shoes in the toilet. But on that very day he was presented with the opportunity that would change his life. A wealthy man saw him in the uniform of a prestigious school. So wealthy man asked him, "My son's Tom is also from your school. Do you know him?" Of course Jack didn't know him. He hadn't even finished primary school. The uniform was just a loan for appearances. But Jack didn't want to miss out on the chance to make friends with the rich. So he replied immediately.
How is Vicky?
Seems like a simple answer, but it's very thoughtful. Not only does imply that him knows, he can also throw out questions and open up the conversation with the rich man. Make a rich man feel good about him and impress him. Sure enough, within a few days he was approached by wealthy man. Wealthy man wanted him to go to Italy and bring back his son who was not coming home, and will give him a large sum of money as a reward. Jack froze. How would he know the son of rich man? He was about to say no, but the rich man turned around and walked away. The rich man didn't give him a chance to refuse. Jack had no choice but to agree to it. Back home, Jack started investigating the rich kid. When he learns that rich kid likes jazz, Jack began to learn all kinds of jazz music. With a superb learning ability, he soon got the hang of it. When everything is ready, Jack then travels to Italy and sees the rich boy on the beach. But he didn't rush into it. He watched for a while. A perfect plan was drawn up. Jack poses as an alumnus pretending to pass by, saying hello to the rich kid. The rich guy asks him what he's doing here. Jack lied and said he was here on holiday. But the rich guy sees through his lie. "If you're here on holiday, why aren't you tanned?" Jack was a little embarrassed. But luckily the rich kid's fiancée was very welcoming and invited him to lunch. At the table, Jack again used his great talent for imitation. He amused the rich boy's father by mimicking his words.
Oh, I like to sail. Believe me, I love to sail. Instead, I make boats.
Stop! It's too much. You're making all the hairs on my neck stand up.
Just as the rich boy was feeling the novelty, Jack made his intentions clear to the rich boy. He said, "I've been sent by your father to take you home." The rich boy's face turned black when he heard. He said there was no way he was going home, and told Jack to get out of the place. To his surprise, Jack agreed. He packed his bags and said goodbye to the rich boy. But just as he was leaving, Jack appears to have accidentally dropped a few jazz records favored by rich kids.
You like jazz? Love jazz.
The rich boy was surprised. He had no idea that Jack and he shared the same interests and had exactly the same tastes. This immediately got the rich kid interested, immediately asking Jack to stay. But what he didn't know was that this was all Jack's plan. Jack knew very well that he could not convince the rich boy to go back with just his own mouth. It might even cause the rich boy to resent him. Instead of that, he could find a way to become friends with him. Soon, Jack had gained the rich boy's trust. Not only did he live in the rich boy's mansion, but he also becomes a double agent, cheating rich old dad out of money to eat, drink, and be merry. Jack, a poor boy, is living the life of a rich man for the first time. Soon, he loses himself. Unknowingly, Jack began to imitate the rich kid. Not only did he imitate his tone of voice and actions, he even wore the rich kid's clothes, using his things. But what he didn't know was that he's just a plaything for a rich kid. Soon, the novelty of a rich kid wore off. He returns to his original circle of rich friends. One of the fat guys looked down on Jack and taunted him. "Not only do you eat rich kids' food, you live in rich kids' houses. You even take his father's money. You're a parasite." Jack was angry, but he didn't snap on the spot. He thought that if he kept putting up with it, he could continue to be friends with the rich kid, and that life would go on. But he also had a vague feeling that this dream seemed to be waking up. On day, the two went to sea together. Jack was excitedly planning his future, but the rich boy was suddenly angry. The rich boy told him to roll home.
I think we've seen enough of each other for a while. You can be a leech. You know that. It's boring.
Hearing these words, Jack's heart was broken, and the two had a big fight. At this moment, Jack was soberly aware of the gap between himself and the rich kids. Jack irritated and angry. He could no longer control. This man is about to become a rich man, because he's going to kill the rich kid in front of him, and take his place. Jack held up the oar, and hit the rich kid in the head one after the other. It was the first time he had ever killed anyone. He climbed ashore, not knowing what to do. He saw the boat with the bodies slowly sinking into the sea. He panicked and went back to the hotel. He was ready to get his things and run, but a word from the front desk made him hesitate.
Signor Greenleaf, yes?
No.
It turned out that these days he had been imitating the rich Tom's every move, slowly and subconsciously. Jack had taken on 8 parts of the rich kid's demeanor. At this moment, Jack had a bold idea. He decided to live as a rich kid's, but there was one fatal weakness in this matter. That is the rich kid's fiancé. In order to conceal his identity, Jack first wrote a breakup letter imitating the Tom's tone. Then he imitated the notes of the Tom and signed Tom's signature. And finally, he wrapped the letter in a perfume package. It's Tom and his fiancé's little secret. Tom didn't tell anyone, but Jack, who was very attentive, found out. As expected, the fiancé was devastated after receiving the letter. The next step was to fake a sign that Tom was still alive. Jack took Tom's luggage and traveled to Rome overnight. He opened 2 different hotels. He traveled back and forth between the 2 hotels, calling himself, leaving messages with the front desk, creating the illusion that Tom was still alive. Then Jack used Tom's name to meet a rich girl. She and the rich girl went to the bank together to withdraw money. The rich girl was familiar with the teller. When the teller's guard is down, Jack hands over her passport, but the teller is still a little hesitant to look at the photo. Then Jack said,
I don't want too many large bills. No one will change them.
Sure enough, the hassle of the job makes the teller stop checking right away, and started counting the notes one by one. Next thing you know, Jack takes Tom's money and starts customizing expensive clothes. He could buy as many as he wanted. Before he knew it, Jack seemed to be a real aristocrat. But soon, a new problem arose. That day, he went to the opera with a rich girl, but during the intermission, Jack bumped into someone who called himself Peter. But the worst thing was, behind Peter was Tom's fiancé, took off the rich kid's ring in a hurry, and put on his black glasses. He became Jack, the poor boy. It turns out that Tom's fiancé came to Rome to confront the Tom. Jack was in a panic because the rich girl is nearby. Once the 2 women meet, his double identity will be exposed. At the critical moment, he made an appointment with the Tom's fiancé tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock at the cafe. Then he took off his glasses. He becomes a rich kid again. Then he left the theater with the rich girl. When he got out of the car, Jack had a plan. He also asked the rich girl to meet him tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock at the same cafe. And so, the 2 women met. Jack was peeping from a short distance away. The fiancé thinks Tom dumped her to find another woman, and the rich girl thinks that the rich guy arranged the meeting so that she can help him to get rid of her. This is really a great trick. The Tom's fiancé was completely disillusioned. Jack finally solved the problem. He rented a luxury flat, ready to start his new life. But that day, an unexpected guest came to his door. It was Eddie, a friend of Tom. Eddie said Tom was supposed to go skiing with him, but now he's suddenly disappeared. So Eddie found the flat registered in his name. He didn't realize that there was only Jack here. Eddie was already suspicious. Obviously it's the rich kid's flat, but why is the decoration so shabby? And Jack was looking more and more like a rich kid, but there's no proof. Eddie could only mock Jack and leave. Downstairs, he ran into the landlady. He saw the landlady looking up at Jack and shouting out the name of Tom. At that moment, Eddie understood everything.
If he doesn't play the piano.
Jack knew very well that he could not convince the rich boy to go back with just his own mouth. It might even cause the rich boy to resent him. Instead of that, he could find a way to become friends with him. Soon, Jack had gained the rich boy's trust. Not only did he live in the rich boy's mansion, but he also becomes a double agent, cheating rich old dad out of money to eat, drink, and be merry. Jack, a poor boy, is living the life of a rich man for the first time. Soon, he loses himself. Unknowingly, Jack began to imitate the rich kid. Not only did he imitate his tone of voice and actions, he even wore the rich kid's clothes, using his things. But what he didn't know was that he's just a plaything for a rich kid. Soon, the novelty of a rich kid wore off. He returns to his original circle of rich friends. One of the fat guys looked down on Jack and taunted him. Not only do you eat rich kids' food, you live in rich kids' houses. You even take his father's money. You're a parasite. Jack was angry, but he didn't snap on the spot. He thought that if he kept putting up with it, he could continue to be friends with the rich kid, and that life would go on. But he also had a vague feeling that this dream seemed to be waking up. On day, the 2 went to sea together. Jack was excitedly planning his future, but the rich boy was suddenly angry. The rich boy told him to roll home.
I think we've seen enough of each other for a while. You can be a leech. You know that. It's boring.
Hearing these words, Jack's heart was broken, and the 2 had a big fight. At this moment, Jack was soberly aware of the gap between himself and the rich kids. Jack irritated and angry. He could no longer control. This is a very spooky murder house. For nearly 100 years, anyone who has lived in the villa will disappear in mysterious ways. And his builder, when the house was built, the whole family disappeared overnight. Then his relatives got a bargain and inherited the villa. Unexpectedly, 30 years later, on the 11th of November, the relatives who lived in the villa also disappeared. Then the government sold the villa at a bargain. Ellie's husband bought it for a bargain and inherited the villa, but he died in the house 30 years ago. After reading the information, the priest found out the murder house has been experiencing strange occurrences every 30 years. Nowadays, it happens to be 30 years since her husband's accident. And on the other side, the moment Ellie looked up in front of the mirror, suddenly realized that there was a person in the mirror. She was holding a fruit knife in her hand. She looked at Ellie without saying a word. Ellie hurriedly locked the door. After a few minutes, when there was no sound from outside, Ellie quietly opened the door. She went through the corridor to the bedroom. The room had been torn apart. What's even more bizarre is that a row of numbers appeared on the dresser mirror. 6 numbers 11 written in blood, just when Ellie was scared. Ellie yells and tries to shoo it away, but the door slammed open, and then 2 police officers walked in. Just when Ellie didn't know what to do, the priest finally arrived. He told Ellie the results of his investigation, combined with the mysterious numbers on the mirror. This villa will be the site of another strange event tonight at 11 hours 11 minutes and 11 seconds. It puts the rubbish inside its body. After compressing it hard, the rubbish turns into small cubes. Jack is the last rubbish recycling robot on Earth. He's been alone on Earth for 700 years. At first, it was just programmed to put the rubbish in neat piles. As time passed, Jack became self-aware. It began to imitate the process of stacking rubbish into buildings of various shapes. When he rebuilt the Steel City, maybe the humans will come back. But as building after building was erected, this little mantis is still the only one keeping Jack company. Jack must endure endless loneliness. At the end of the day, Jack returned to his room. Inside, his collection is neatly organized. He carefully took off his shoes and entered the house. Jack started his own relaxation time. First, he puts on his favorite music. Then he put away the things he had collected today, sorted into categories. But there's a problem with today's classification. This thing that looks like a fork and a spoon at the same time. There doesn't seem to be a place where it should be placed. Jack had to put it in the middle alone, watching humans holding hands on the screen. The inexplicable feeling of loneliness returned. Jack wished he had someone to keep him company like this. It gives food to its pet mantis. It puts itself away. It sits in the collection, rocking all alone. The low battery beep woke Jack up. No one's forcing it to charge, though, but the battery is still a limiting factor in his life. He needs to get out of his room when the sun is at its strongest, for 2 hours in the sun, and then start his day's work. Jack is serious about doing repetitive work every day. Even robots get bored, but it's always got surprises in its work. The joy of collecting them can always wash away the loneliness. He found something that looked like an eye patch, put it on, and it made him happy, so he decided to keep it. Then he found a beautiful box. The contents were a bit blinding. Throw it away. The box stays. Then it cut open a refrigerator, and found a vibrant green plant inside. It doesn't fit in with the charred yellow waste ground. Jack gently scooped it up into his own little box. Suddenly, a red dot caught his eye. He chased it all the way. It catches the moving red dot. Unbeknownst to him, danger was already behind him. By the time it reacts, it was too late. Luckily, he dug a hole in time to escape the danger. The airship brought more than disaster, but also the love he'd always dreamed of. A grumpy life-scanning robot. As soon as the boy boarded the plane, he had a feeling something was wrong. Suddenly, he looked at the plane's flight. The departure time was 9:25, and that number was his birth date. And then the ticket agent put a label on his suitcase. All it says is where the flight ends. Jack turned his head again. Then a look of surprise came over his face. But what's even stranger is that, just 6 hours ago, sleeping Jack was suddenly awakened by an eerie gust of wind. And just then the propellers of the plane inside the house were turning fast. He looked up, but he didn't find anything. Then he fell back into a deep sleep. Just then, the alarm clock next to him went from 1 a.m. to 1800 hours p.m. in an instant. What he didn't expect was, the flight he took corresponded to that number, and the departure time was his birthday. A series of strange and bizarre things happened again before he boarded the plane. Just when he was going to the toilet, suddenly he heard music playing outside. He had heard this song before. However, the lyrics in it happened to be related to crashing machines. Jack didn't care. As he walked into the cabin of a plane, he saw old blocks of tin, and a crying baby next to him. Again, he felt something was wrong. It seemed like it was all a sign of things to come. And then Jack went to his seat, suspecting that he might have been too nervous, and breathed a sigh of relief, fastened his seatbelt, and waited for the plane to take off. But just then, the weather changed suddenly. Soon it started to rain. At that moment, 2 of his classmates came up to him. They asked Jack to switch places with them, but the boy in front of Jack made a sudden upward movement towards him. Jack knew it was a gesture of rejection, but he ignored it. He directly agreed to the female classmate's request. Then he went to his classmate's seat. That's when the broken dining room table caught his eye. He wanted to fix it, but he realized that the table's buttons were broken. He had no choice but to call out to the flight attendants, but by now the plane was ready to take off. Jack became nervous. Suddenly, a bumpy ride hits him. He panicked and grabbed the armrest. At this point, the passengers on the plane were getting nervous, but then it's back to normal, so it's just a sign that the plane's taking off. Jack breathed a sigh of relief, but just then, the cabin shook violently again. All the passengers immediately felt uneasy. First the luggage racks shook, then the power went out. The cabin began to grow darker. Suddenly, there was an explosion on the left wing. People in the vicinity were sucked down by the air currents, and then the flames came crashing down on them. In the heat of the moment, Jack woke up suddenly. He realized it was just a dream, but his classmates were swapping places with him. He didn't have time to hesitate. Jack got up in a hurry to check damaged tables, and sure enough, the buttons on the dining room table turned out to be exactly the same as in the dream. At that moment, he stood up. The sensation of foreknowledge of death rushed into his brain. Jack suddenly suddenly became agitated. In the process, he got into a fight with a fellow classmate. Then they were kicked off the plane by the captain. The female teacher repeatedly asked to board the plane, but the captain refused. But just then, Jack rushed to tell the crowd what he had foreseen. But the classmates next to him thought he was making a big deal out of it. It was just a dream, and then a confrontation ensued. But just then, a plane exploded in the sky. It shattered the glass at the airport in an instant, just as Jack predicted in his dream. There were no survivors in the cabin of a plane. Because of Jack's decision, they survived. And yet, the bill of death had already been opened, and the logic of fate was fixed.